first topic of the day, as I stare into the camera, because this is going to be the actual thing that's going to be uploaded to YouTube. Got to look good for the internet. But first topic of the day, we got Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix. It's a documentary series, a sports documentary series. I know it's sports. Who cares about sports, Mike? I care about sports. Okay. I care about sports. I really enjoyed Sunderland Till I Die. I really love Last Chance U. I love The Last Dance. All these Netflix documentaries are just fucking bangers. And the unique thing about this one is I think it's the best one on Netflix, and we'll get into why. But yeah, I mean, if you're unfamiliar with what this docuseries is, it follows the 2018, 2019, and 2020 seasons of the sport Formula One, the Formula One racing. It's where, they like drive around. It's not like a circular track. It's not NASCAR. It's not drag racing or whatever you call it. That whole big, Monaco race that everyone kind of like knows about. That's Formula One racing. So the first season covers 2018, second season covers 2019, and third season covers the 2020 season, which is interesting. But why is this series so good, Mike? Why do you think it's the best sports documentary on Netflix right now? Well, I pretty much think it has something for absolutely everyone. I think that the show is mainly tailored to people who have no familiarity or just some familiarity of what Formula One is. Like, I kind of knew of the sport when I watched it, so I learned so much from it. And now I actually follow Formula One racing now. Like, I watch highlights, I follow the standings, I follow the drivers, I follow the fucking subreddit. Like, I follow Formula One racing because of this show. And whenever a docuseries can make you pay attention to like whatever it is, detailing in the future, like it clearly does its job. I mean, this one definitely does its job. So it's mainly tailored to newcomers, for people who have no idea what Formula One is or just kind of know of it. So I mean, with that, that's kind of a little bit of a criticism, but we'll get into that a little bit more at the end of the topic when I get into some minor critiques of the show that I have. But I even think people who follow the sport still can thoroughly enjoy this show. So, I mean, other than just, it being tailored to, newcomers, that is really nice for people, because most people who watch it for the first time aren't familiar with the sport like I wasn't. So it really delves deep into the sport itself, the races, like where races are, the tracks, the drivers, the constructors or the teams, like Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Williams, Haas, AlphaTauri, all those are the constructors. And then you have the drivers such as Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, Romain Grosjean, all those guys. So it really delves deep into those, and the teams themselves, and like the team managers, and just kind of like behind the scenes of what goes into running and driving for a Formula One team. And that's just the main thing that the show really nails, is it just kind of gets into the particulars of the sport. Not the super particulars like the science and the aerodynamics of the car and the mechanics of the car and how cars are designed, how they drive. We'll get into that a little bit more. But it touches on like some history of the sport and some background of each race and background of some constructors, some like backstory of certain drivers that the show focuses on. It doesn't follow every single driver. There's like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 that get left out like every season, but sometimes they get picked up in the following season if they're still in Formula One. There's only 20 drivers, so there's only 20 seats. Take a quick drink here. But yeah, I mean, what it really does go into is like how the sport is so much different from pretty much anything else out there. I mean, I don't think even NASCAR is like this, where your own teammate is your biggest rival. Because in Formula One, each team, like Ferrari for example, has two drivers, and they both drive the same car. They drive the same Ferrari car with the same specs. So people measure you directly with your teammate. So if you finish in front of your teammate, you're faster than your teammate. So you're a better driver. You must be. Or, on the opposite hand, if you finished later than your driver and you drive slower and you're a worse driver. And this kind of provides a lot of drama throughout the whole series, which is like the beauty of the sport. And it really gets into that. And it's some of the stuff that anyone can really get into. And just how, the tensions can really build throughout a season when a partner of drivers, their relationship starts to deteriorate because more and more incidents start to happen. You lose more and more, and you just kind of come out of favor with the team itself and the team principle. And tensions kind of get high, and like sometimes shit happens. So I thought it's really engaging. I love the whole series is like that. It's amazing. But other than, the soap opera of the whole sport, you have the races themselves. And shout out to Formula One as a business, how they just have these amazing shots of the races, and the onboarding shots of each car during a race is insanely engaging and so cool. If you don't know what onboarding is, if you watch a show or if you watch a Formula One race, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's when they show you the camera shot of an actual on top of a Formula One car as it's racing, and it's so good. And the camera quality is insane. So, I mean, with that, the shots that they get are insanely good. Shout out to the documentarians of just getting the access that they do. There's certain moments in the show where you're kind of like, are we supposed to be listening or watching this shit? Because I feel like we shouldn't be listening to this. I feel like this is like some backdoor type of decision here that we really shouldn't be in on. It's really surprising how much access that the documentarians really get, which is something that I heard that Sunderland Till I Die crew really struggled with. They really struggled with access to the players and the inside, dealings of the club of Sunderland, which kind of prevented it from being really special. I felt like, because that the thing that Sunderland Till I Die really lacked, which this show has, is it delves deep into the players or the personalities of the show. I wish Sunderland Till I Die followed and really delved deep into more of the players or the coach or the manager, and it really doesn't. Probably because they just couldn't get as much access as they wanted. But with Drive to Survive, it seems like these documentarians have all the access in the world, and you see almost everything, but not everything. And I think the documentary definitely paints things in a certain way to cater to the audience and make it a little bit more entertaining. So, it is entertainment. That's kind of what the documentary is kind of supposed to do, along with informing you. So, yeah, that could be a criticism, but it's entertainment, so I don't really care that much. But I'm sure the drivers and, team managers don't really appreciate certain things that the documentarians kind of paint in the show, but it is what it is. But I mean, just technically, the documentary is flawless in like every technical aspect, with the camera shots, the interviews, the questions that they clearly ask, the way it's edited, the way it kind of almost like every episode is like its own little mini story that follows, whether it's a driver or a constructor or a group of drivers or just a race or in a specific event that's happening. It's like its own little story, which I really liked, and that's it. It's a display of documentarians who know how to make a documentary, which I really appreciate. So I could gush about this show as much as the next person, but I mean, I do have some certain criticisms of the show. It's not absolutely perfect. So, like I said before, the show definitely caters to newcomers of the sport. Definitely, if you have no familiarity of the sport, you'll definitely enjoy it more. But I mean, this show got me following Formula One. Like I watch the races or the highlights. I follow the sport now, and when I watched season 1 and 2, I didn't follow the sport. I just watched the series, and that got me into it. So I loved the first 2 seasons, and then the third season I watched. I really enjoyed it. I pretty much loved it, but I didn't love it as much as the first 2. And that is primarily because I follow the sport, and there's certain things that I wanted them to cover that they just kind of glossed over. And so that kind of leads me to believe if you're more familiar with the sport, you probably won't enjoy it as much as someone who doesn't follow the sport or doesn't know anything about it. So that's it was a little bit disappointing for me. Like there's the moment in the 2020 season where, Lewis Hamilton, contracted COVID, and they had to bring in George Russell from Williams. They called him up to be a substitute driver. I forget which race it was. It might have been the Bahrain Grand Prix. I'm not 100% sure. That would kind of make sense because of the big crash that happened at the Bahrain Grand Prix in the 2020 season, kind of overshadowed the whole George Russell almost winning that race, but then because of a Mercedes pit stop fiasco or debacle, he lost. He didn't lose. He did lose the race, but he still finished pretty high. But he could have won. He would have won the race if that if that little mix up in the pit lane didn't happen. I kind of wish they really would have went into that a little bit more, because I feel like that event's going to kind of affect this coming season and then even the season after it. Because there's obviously some rumblings now that Lewis Hamilton's not really happy that George Russell's probably going to be coming up and partnering him at Mercedes. Maybe he's a little bit, self-conscious or, not being the number one guy anymore, with George Russell being a younger dude, an up-and-coming type of driver, and Lewis Hamilton's kind of getting older. So yeah, I feel like that was a big story and they just kind of glossed over it. So it's certain things like that kind of annoyed me a little bit because I really wanted to cover that, but it is what it is. You can only cover so much in in 10 episodes, 45-minute episodes. So yeah, I mean, also other things, it doesn't go into specifics explaining certain terms that all the drivers and team managers use in interviews, like understeer, oversteer, finishing on pole position, hitting the apex on a turn. I kind of know these terms now, but when I was watching, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't know what that means. But I mean, eventually you pick up on it and you kind of make sense of everything. So yeah, overall thoughts on the show, it's freaking incredible. I highly recommend it to pretty much everyone. I showed it to my mom, who's not into sports at all, and she follows Formula One right now. She watched the whole series again with me. So yeah, she loves Formula One. I love Formula One now. I follow the sport. I think this show will make you a fan of the sport. I don't think you'll regret watching it if you do. And I mean, if you do regret watching it, well, fuck me, I guess. I'm sorry. Sorry I made you watch a really incredibly well-made documentary series, and not fucking Fast and the Furious. Watch this shit. Watch Formula One Drive to Survive, and don't watch fucking Fast and the Furious. It's more entertaining than Fast and the Furious. Period. Hello there. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, this is Nerd Out Sanctuary. I'm your host, Michael. What do I talk about, you say? Well, I talk about anything nerdy. So that's movies, video games, TV shows, comic books every once in a while. Books, maybe not. I don't know. Anything that I feel like talking about. I'm a huge nerd. I hope you're a huge nerd, and I hope we can enjoy our nerdiness together here. This is a full audio podcast available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the major podcast platforms. So consider going over to those and checking out the full version of the episode. And other past episodes, please leave me a review and subscribe on those platforms. If you don't want to do that, clipped, shorter versions of those full episodes will be posted here on YouTube. So consider subscribing and liking the videos for more to support me and future content that I will be producing in the future on nerdy stuff. So yeah, thank you, and see you on the next one.